Hello everyone. So, as much as I have been working on advocating for Gulf War illness, I get a lot of times people ask me questions. And one of the questions that people tend to ask me, being retired military, is what is your view and your position on all these conflicts that the U.S. tends to engage in? What is your view on war? And I'm going to tell you how I feel about this. I love my country. I will defend it to the end with my own life. However, I am absolutely opposed to military action when it is not needed. It should be the absolute last resort. Always. Always. And it should only be authorized by Congress, not the president, by Congress. The president asks for it, Congress will either approve it or deny it. And I'm going to tell you why. You take, for example, the first Gulf War, Desert Storm, Desert Shield. Well, actually, let's go back some years. Let's go back to Vietnam. Alright? You go to Vietnam, you have all these veterans, all these soldiers that went over there. At the time, there was the draft, right? We fought a war that was very unpopular. These veterans come home, and this nation, honestly, it was a disgrace as towards how these veterans were treated. They were sent over there to fight a war, which, wasn't their fault. They come back home and they get treated by the general public as trash, as baby killers. They're the baby killers. This wasn't their choice. This wasn't their war. If you ever want to be ticked off at somebody, mad at somebody, you should be complaining to the politicians. Tell them, hey, knock it off. Not the soldier. It's not their fault. They're following orders. They come home, the public does not appreciate them, spits in their face, treats them like trash, and honestly, I find the treatment of them disgusting. And I wish America would, for every Vietnam veteran walking around there, I wish the American public would go up to them and say, you know what? I am sorry. They put up with a lot of crap from us, and they did not deserve that. Now, talking about Vietnam, they were exposed to Agent Orange. It took the government not weeks, not months, not years, decades to admit the fact that Agent Orange was real. That they were exposed to chemicals, and because of this, they have all kinds of health problems, and they are dying because of what they were exposed to. To the Vietnam vets out there, I want to thank you for what you have done, and this nation owes you a great debt. Now, fast forward. Why do I oppose wars? Why am I I think it should be the very last thing? Because I'm going to tell you why. Let's fast forward to the first Gulf War. The first Gulf War, there was a nurse Nigeria, that came on national news, went before the UN Council, crying tears out how the Iraqis had invaded Kuwait, and they were doing horrible crimes. They were taking babies out of the incubators and so on.
I only pray that none of my 10th grade classmates had a summer vacation like I did. I may have wished sometime that I could be an adult.
Here's the deal. She lied her butt off. She lied. She was not even in the country when this was going on. There has not been any documented proof that these claims that these babies, these tortures and so on were happening. I have looked, and it has been debunked. So, we went to war because supposedly these people were being inhumane, cruel, barbaric. Another thing was, we went to war because Iraq had WMDs. They had chemical weapons. So we went full force. Now, this is the thing I want you to think about. After the war was over with, all of a sudden there was a huge PR campaign, which I included, bought into it. I bought into it. You know, they convinced the general public that there were, oops, we made a mistake, there were no WMDs. Guess again. Yes, there were. Right here, as you can see on the screen, those are the bunkers at Kamazia. These are all the ammunitions that were discovered when we went over there. Now, Iraq did have chemical weapons, and we were exposed to these chemicals over there. Why? How did it happen? Yes, Iraq used some of the chemicals. However, the most exposure came from when our own troops, our own military, went into these bunkers and blew them up. So, of course, that sarin gas, that mustard gas, carried over into the atmosphere. You got sprayed with that stuff. We've been trying for decades now, trying to get the VA to give us help. It has, to this day, still has not happened. Trying to get help from the VA. Just as the Vietnam veterans had to go through with Agent Orange. Now, as towards war, I'm going to tell you why I'm against it. Alright? Because ever since they went to an all-volunteer force, right? Think about this. In the past, with the draft, everybody was subject to military service, to include family members of congressmen, congresswomen, senators, etc. Even the rich had an obligation if they were called up to serve, right? These days, that doesn't happen. With the all-volunteer force, there's no investment, there's no connection with the military. So now we are two separate entities. What kind of investment does the general public have with the veterans when chances are less than 1% of the general population has any kind of ties with the military? I am a firm believer we need to bring back the draft. Do you realize that during the draft, when we had the draft, the total engagements that the U.S. has had has been 24. 24 times they have engaged in combat. Since repealing the draft and going to an all-volunteer force, since 1973, there has been 134 times the military has been called for action. If you think about it, why are we even going there? Why are we going there? I'm going to tell you why. Like myself, being a young, naive GI who enlisted, I joined the military for love of my country. However, how stupid I was. I love my country, don't get me wrong. However, when you go to a military conflict, you're not going there for the benefit of the country. Most likely, you are going there because you are going to participate in securing the wealth for the filthy rich. That's what these wars are about. They're not about this stuff going on with Syria, it's none of our business. That's none of our business. Let them deal with their own conflict. They want freedom, let them figure it out. But we have they will send the military there, they will send them to Iraq, they will send them to Afghanistan and all these countries. Why? Because of big government contracts, such as Halliburton, Boeing, etc. That's why I say, no. When it comes to war, let the rich fight their own wars. They're not taking part in this. They don't. I can guarantee you, they don't have any family members serving non-active duty. When people ask me about going into the military, I appreciate the sentiment. I understand where they're coming from. Exactly like me. When I was younger and naive and did not know any better, I always tell them, is that your only choice? Would you not rather go to college, get an education, get a good paying job? I don't recommend it, because chances are this is what's going to happen to you. Just like Agent Orange and just like with Gulf War illness, right? You're going to go to a conflict, to another country, one that the PR campaign that will be mounted by the multimedia, such as all these news channels, they're controlled by by big corporate, big money companies. So of course they are not going to broadcast anything negative about the war, right? They're not going to tell you that. Why? Because big banks have the moolah in it, right? So if you volunteer to go and serve, it's not going to be for country. It's not going to be for country. It's bottom line is you're going to go there to serve the purposes, to serve the benefit of the filthy rich companies such as, like I said before, Boeing, Halliburton, and so on. Look at all the government contracts that they have. Look at how many billions of dollars they have made from these wars. This is how I feel about it. I'm going to tell you, number one, only Congress is authorized to go to war. And don't camouflage it as a conflict, right? That's one thing they like to do, is they like to take and throw up a smoke screen to camouflage it. Instead of call it war, let's call it a conflict. No. The point is, if you have to lock and load your weapon, fire a round, or a round is fired upon you, it's a war. It's an act of war. Act of war. It's not a conflict. Right? So don't try to camouflage the two. War is war. Needs to be authorized by Congress. Number two, in my opinion, if a congressman or congresswoman does not have anybody, a family member, whether it be a cousin, an aunt, an uncle, or so on, serving in the military, active duty, or reserve, or whatever, right? They don't have a say-so. You don't have the connection, you have no connection with the military, so therefore you have no say-so. No. They don't have a vote. Bring back the draft. Let everybody partake of these wars. Let them all, everybody pitch in. I look at it this way. If you are not willing to defend your country, if you are not willing to sign up in the defense of your country, then you do not have the right to live here. Bottom line. If you cannot defend your country, then get out of here. Go somewhere else. Let's look at a couple of these companies that have made billions of dollars off these wars. You take, for example, United Technologies. as of last year, posted arms sales were $11.6 billion. Total sales $58.2 billion. L3 Communications arms sales $12.5 billion. Total sales $15.2 billion. EADS Aircraft Technologies arms sales $16.4 billion. Total sales $68.3 billion. General Dynamics total sales $32.7 billion. BAE $30.7 billion. Boeing $68.7 billion. Lockheed Martin $46.5 billion. Now think about this. Where do you think those billions are coming from? You and I, the taxpayer. You and I. That's billions and billions of dollars going overseas to fight these wars, which, if you go back and you analyze, I dare you, Google search these wars, you will see they're all based on lies. Take, for example, Iraq right now. Why are we still over there? We went over there supposedly because, he was not complying with UN sanctions and so on, so therefore we're going to force him into compliance. Okay, if he wasn't complying with UN sanctions, shouldn't it be the responsibility of the UN to deal with him? With Saddam Hussein at the time. That should have been the responsibility of the UN, since he was violating UN treaty, not U.S. treaty, right? You take another example, look at Afghanistan, right? We've been over there for how many years? Over a decade now. What have we accomplished? We have spent who knows how much money over there, right? They even built intelligence building that was going to cost millions of dollars, which the general, the commander-in-chief of that area kept on telling the government, DOD, he didn't need it. He didn't want it. He didn't need it. But however, because it was a government contract, they had to build it. There was no choice in that. So see, that's billions and billions of dollars right now going overseas to fight these wars. Those are billions of dollars that could be used right here in the U.S. One, we can use it for our school system. We can use it for our schools. We can use it for all these veterans that are suffering right now and being denied claims like myself because we can't get help from the VA. That can be used for that. It can be used for the who knows how many thousands of veterans that are literally thrown out on the street like human trash. If we must engage the enemy, this is how I see it. One, you give the enemy an ultimatum. You take, for example, let's say, okay, they attacked us 9/11. They attacked us. You tell that country flat out, you have 48 hours to bring me the head of this dirt bag, or we will invade your country, we will destroy your country, we will leave it in ruins, right? We will send missiles, you send at least 500,000 troops to that country. Turn right, you destroy that thing until you get the mission accomplished. Once you have accomplished the mission, you have obtained the party responsible for the attack. Get out. Get out of there. Once you leave, you let that country know, look, the responsibility of rebuilding your country, that's yours, not ours. If you would have controlled this little dirt bag, we wouldn't have had to come over here. I look at it this way. You have a hornet's nest, right? You have a hornet's nest. You walk by it, it's not going to bother you. It's not going to bother you. But you sit there underneath it and you poke it with a stick. See what's going to happen to you. And do you think those hornets are going to come back down and say, oh, I'm sorry I stung you? You want to attack this country full force. You want to show them that, hey, we are a peace-loving country. However, if you provoke us, this is what's going to happen to you. And the responsibility as towards rebuilding and all that, that's not our problem. You shouldn't have allowed this to happen in the first place. So let it happen again, and guess what? This is what's going to happen again. Right now we're looking at around over 200, the estimate is at around 250,000 Gulf War veterans suffering from Gulf War illness like myself. So at least 200,000. We're not getting help from the VA, but that's bottom line. You know, no, I mean, if they are thinking I'm lying about my ailments, I welcome them any day, anytime. Hook me up to a lie detector test, and we will do it live on Google Hangout. Matter of fact, I have invited the Veterans Administrations on several occasions to conduct a Google Hangout with me and several Gulf War veteran advocates. They have yet to respond to it. I am inviting them once again with this video. I would love to conduct a Google Hangout with the VA, right, so we could get to the bottom line when it comes to Gulf War syndrome. When it comes to volunteering for the military, going back to that subject, volunteering for the military, until they bring back the draft, right, where everybody within society gets their fair share of what all these little wars that the U.S. likes to engage in, I would not advise it. A lot of people are going to look at me and, you know, they're going to click dislike this video and they're going to cuss me out and so on. No, I'm a patriot. I'm a realist. I am looking at the reality of this, and I'm a patriot. I'm trying to bring back this country to where it represents the true people, where we're not bought out and sold off to wars by big corporations. And what I want is, number one, what I want is the politicians to start representing the people like they were voted to, instead of taking money from all these big companies, all these big government contracts, right, to try to secure millions for themselves in the future. Number two, I want this country to truly appreciate the service that our military does for them. These people, these young men and these young women are willing to sacrifice their life to keep our country safe. These benefits that the VA continues to deny us, these are not, I would say, you know, like a lot of times people look at, oh, they're handouts from the government and so on. You know, these are like welfare checks from the government and so on. No. I did 20 plus years in the military. This is something that I earned. So all this red cluster, all this red tape that the VA tries to throw up, all right, that needs to stop. If you want people to serve, we held up our end of our obligation, right? So it's the VA's responsibility to hold up their end of the obligation. The truth is this. This is what, when it comes to stuff like Agent Orange, Gulf War illness, and believe me, a lot of these veterans that are going to Iraq and Iraq and Afghanistan, they're going to come down with all kinds of internal ailments that the VA is going to try to come back and push back on it, saying, oh, it's a mental condition. Oh, it's PTSD. Everything to the VA is PTSD. You know, everything. You cut your toe. That's PTSD. My arm got blown off. Oh, that's PTSD. They try to push it off. But believe me, all these veterans come back from all these conflicts. They're going to come back with internal health problems, as myself, 10, 20 years down the road. Right? Now, when they start going through what we're going through, this burden is going to end up on the taxpayer. So I urge the taxpayer, if you don't want to pay for helping veterans, then you need to start contacting these politicians and tell them, hey, knock it off. You need to quit with the wars. All these little conflicts, all these little wars, digging our nose in every country's business. It's none of our business. Some country over there in Africa wants, they want freedom. You know, they want to fight for liberty or whatever. Let them do it. That's their problem, not ours. Going back to young men and women that are looking to join the military. If you're looking to join, or if you're on active duty right now, there's a couple things that I would strongly suggest to you. Number one, get a copy of all your records, your dental records, your shop records. You might think it's not important. You may think, oh, that's just shop records. You may think it's not important. Believe me, when you're my age and you're going through what I'm going through, it's going to become very important. So you need to make copies of everything. Number two, get them digitized. Get organized. I have everything I have is on a thumb drive. Here's the backup drive. So I have two of them. The duplicate copies. I also have all my records. Everything is backed up on a cloud drive. Once you start submitting claims for the VA, and you have obtained all your records, you need to get hold, if you have any paperwork through the VA, you need to get copies of all files, everything the VA has on you. Get copies of those also. Once you get all your documentation, get organized. You must get organized. This is one of my books. This is only one. With my table of contents, exactly what I have in here. Everything's in there. Alright? You have to get organized. This right here is only one of 3 books. However, I'm telling you this right now because, as with Gulf War veterans, when we came back from the war, when we were coming back from the war, prior to even coming back, a lot of the documentation was ordered to be disposed of. Alright, so a lot of documentation didn't come with us. A lot of documentation was destroyed. A lot of documentation somehow ended up being destroyed during a fire at one of the VA, at one of the records keeping locations that the military has. So a lot of records were destroyed. So that's why I always tell you, back up everything, because in case it gets destroyed or whatever, you have something to fall back on. Also, a lot of records, just as in the case, it's on my Google Plus page. There was 2 employees from one of the VA centers who were caught destroying they were caught destroying records of over 1,800 veterans. They got caught red-handed. They were so blunt about how they went about it. They flat out took records and threw them in the woods behind the center. They just threw them out there in the woods. They didn't care. And here's the funny thing: those two VA employees, they're still employed. The only thing that ever happened to them is they got a letter of reprimand and probation. That's it. However, over 1,800 veterans are now, think about where they're at. Think about what kind of problems they are going to face trying to appeal their cases, submit claims, etc. Their records are destroyed. If they didn't back it up, that's gone. I'm gonna wrap it up. That's my position. That's how I feel about war. You may disagree with me. You may want to punch me out. I give a crap. I fought for my freedom of speech, and I will say what the heck I want to say. You don't like it? I don't care. It's not my problem. I earned this right to speak my piece, and I will speak it. Once again, bring back the draft. Bring back the draft. Bring back the draft. Let the rich, let the politicians, let the general public have a direct connection and a direct responsibility with maintaining and protecting this country. I know I have. Thank you.